Hi, this is Michelle Specht. Dr. McKenna on Star Trek continues. As ship's counselor, I am recommending you listen to the soothing sounds of the Trek Geeks podcast with Dan Davidson and Bill Smith. Doctor's orders.
From the Podfleet Command home office in the Granite State, it's the biggest little show this side of the Alpha Quadrant, your independent Star Trek podcast. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Trek Geeks. I'm your co-host, Bill Smith. Hey, we just landed from Las Vegas, and boy, are my arms tired. Yay, ba-doom, boom. Yeah, thank you. That voice you hear groaning in pain is my incredible co-host. He's the very residential Dan Davidson. Dan, you're 7 minutes away from me, yet I'm still looking at your ugly mug on my computer. How you doing, buddy?
I wish I was 7,000 minutes away from you most of the time, but it's good to be here, I got to say, in the new house, settling in very nicely. 7 minutes, that's going to be a great commute next week when we actually start commuting together again. Thanks for taking the week off and working from home, jerk. But that's okay. It's good to be here. I love getting back behind the microphone and talking some Trek, and we've got some awesome stuff to talk about tonight with our recap of another amazing Star Trek Las Vegas trip that we just got back from this week.
You know, it's hard to believe this is the fourth one you and I have done together. It's after not doing any of them together previously. And they fly by every year. I feel like we wait 51 weeks for this to happen, and it's gone in an instant. But man, what a week it was, and we've got a lot to unpack. Joining us to unpack some of that luggage is a special guest geek for the full hour, Dan.
Oh, it's always good to introduce new people to the podcast. He's a great friend of ours. He is the founder and the editor of TrekNews.net, which you might have heard about on this here podcast. He is Brian Wilkins. Brian, we caught up with you out in Vegas. We got lots of stuff to talk about, and we are both very excited that you're joining us here tonight on episode 147.
147. Hey guys, thank you guys so much for having me. It's absolutely an honor to finally be on Trek Geeks. I'm glad we could finally make our schedules match up and talk some STLV.
It only took 147 episodes and meeting you 2,000 miles away from our, combined locations in New England, because you're literally maybe an hour away from us.
This is true. Very true.
We plan well. We plan well, don't we, Dan?
We do plan well. This is the second time I had the honor of meeting you, one of the most beautiful people on the planet Earth, married to the most beautiful woman on the planet Earth, and now you have a kid who is the most beautiful kid on the planet Earth. But it was nice to meet you both for the second time. Bill missed it the first time a couple years ago, but that's okay. We made up for it this time, and we had a great time.
This is true. Her light definitely shines on me, and her beauty makes us both look good, I would hope. It was awesome seeing you guys out in Vegas. Bill, I'm glad you were able to make it to the bar this year.
I know. In my own defense, last year I was overserved.
Allegedly.
Oh, no, I was.
That's the rumor.
I'm going to come to it right now. I was overserved.
That's one way to spin it.
Yeah, well, it's all about the spin, right?
This is true. This is very true.
Dan, speaking of spin, for those people who may want to give me their war stories of Las Vegas or their overserved recollections, how might they get in touch with us, mon frere?
Well, it is very easy to get in touch with us. Just head on over to trekgeeks.com/contact, and there you will find a variety of ways to send Bill or I a message about anything you want to share with us. You can leave us a voicemail. You can Skype chat us. You can even fill out the contact form to leave us a message, or you can click on that big blue button on the right-hand side of the website to leave us a voice message using SpeakPipe. And hey, we certainly would love it if you would join our official Facebook group, Camp Kittimer. There's always great things happening over there, especially this week. There's a lot of STLV pictures and discussion. We'll have the Friday commute celebration, hopefully returning next week when Bill and I will do our weekly lip sync, especially for our campers. Plus, you're going to get early access to episode of the Trek Geeks podcast before they're ever released to the general populace. So to join the group, just head right on over to facebook.com/groups/Camp Kittimer. One of our wonderful admins will let you right in to join in on all the fun. But guys, I got to tell you, remember that any comments or messages that you leave us in any of these places may be used in a future episode.
Shh, don't tell anyone.
Don't tell anyone.
It's our secret.
No.
One of these days I'm going to change that copy on you because you're like Ron Burgundy. You will read whatever is put in front of you, and it could be career ending. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Well, I will also throw out there that maybe you didn't read it today because I changed it up today before we started recording. So,
I pay such great attention when you read. What can I say? Well, I should, because it's a disaster anytime you start reading the English language.
That is true. Oof.
All right. Well, after this brief break, we're probably going to come back with what I figure is probably Brian's favorite segment in Trek Geeks every single week.
It, without a doubt, is hearing that song every single week brings a smile to my face. You guys were just talking about your commute. I listen to you guys on my 1 hour commute each way to and from work. And it feels like being part of the show right now. Actually, being part of the show.
Part of the show, buddy.
Yeah, we can actually see you. So, yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Dan, it's time for the news from TrekNews.net.
Dan.
Spanning the Alpha Quadrant.
Dan.
For all the news on all the StarTrekz, yo.
Dan.
It's TrekNews.net.
Dan Davidson. Woo.
Wow. I should really start paying you guys for this.
You really should. Yeah. Sponsorship is cheap, I assure you. Online at TrekNews.net. Dan, I noticed a distinct change to your song this week. What inspired that?
Well, we will have to thank our great friend and fellow podcaster, Mr. Barry DeFord of Politrex, for putting that little thing in my ear to do on an upcoming episode of the podcast. And how could I say no to that? I mean, that was just wonderful.
I'm pretty sure one or both of you were overserved for that moment. But Dan and Brian, up first. We're going to be talking a lot about what happened at STLV in our next segment, but there are a couple of interesting things that have cropped up really in just the last 5 days since we've gotten home. And Dan, we've talked often about your education, and luckily for you, there's a brand new course coming to help you with your Star Trekkiness.
Well, you know, I make things go. I am smart, but not as smart as I should be. So a new Star Trek online course is being offered by NetDragon and the Smithsonian Institution. It's called Star Trek Inspiring Culture and Technology. It's going to be a 6-week program focusing on the cultural and technological impact of Star Trek. And it's going to be hosted by Star Trek superfan Scott Mantz, who we actually had the pleasure of seeing host a couple of panels at STLV last week. So that's pretty cool.
You know where we've never seen Scott Mantz? On Discovering Trek. I hope you hear this, man. I hope you hear this. I'm really kind of fascinated by this because, I mean, there have been other Star Trek courses in the past.
Right.
But this one seems to have a very interesting curriculum, which I guess I never would have thought about it that way. I've always been inspired by watching Star Trek. I guess I never figured that there would be a course specifically about the culture and technology. Brian, what do you think about this? I mean, is this something that interests you, or who do you think the core audience is?
I think this is it's super, super cool. I think that as Star Trek fans, we want to embed ourselves in this fandom. We want to learn more and more and more about this thing that we love. As my wife is here waving to you guys behind me. It's one of those things we really want to embed ourselves in. We want to learn more about it, and there's some great minds that are going into this that are going to be teaching this course. And for I think it's $20 but there's a promo for $10, and I think if you were at STLV, they had a promo for even like $5 or something.
Yeah, like $3.
Yeah, to check this thing out. I mean, it's less than a Starbucks coffee at this point, so it's something that I'll sign up for sure.
And Dan needs all the education he can get, so I'm actually going to buy him a subscription to this course because he could certainly be cultured. Really, the only culture he gets is yogurt these days. So, boom.
Moving on.
I keep using that because Piscopo was at STLV this week, and who doesn't love the outrageous Akona? I'm just saying.
Yeah, who does love it?
Yeah, I don't know. Show of hands. Dan, we also met some great folks from Eagle Moss in Vegas this past week, and we saw some incredible ship designs. Their latest Discovery Starship releases have received some glowing reviews at a little site called treknews.net, I might add.
That's a pretty good site. And yes, they have received some great reviews. Both the Klingon Bird of Prey and the USS Kerala got some high marks for attention to detail and the overall look of the models. The Klingon Bird of Prey had a design that was intended to be something that would, quote, stab you in space. And it certainly looks like it's capable with its downward sloping wings. Very cool look to it. And the USS Kerala is a design reminiscent of the old NX-01, which fits perfectly into the timeline with Discovery. And it also has several aspects of the USS Shenzhou in its design. This Shepard-class starship is gorgeous. Both of them were on display in Vegas, and seeing them up close and personal was really quite a rush. And I'm really thinking I'm going to have to add both of them to my collection of ships on my cubicle at work.
I've seen your cubicle at work. It's the same size as mine, which is not very big. And these ships are pretty sizable. I'm not going to lie. I may have spent allegedly a little too much money at the Eagle Moss booth at STLV. I don't know if either of you two suffered from the same thing, but I also now have to find room for a Defiant XL, I might add.
Yes, you do. And that's not a bad thing.
No, it's not a bad thing. I love to see what they're doing with the Discovery starships. I'm fascinated. I can't wait to see an Enterprise. That's what I want now. You know,
well, I don't have one yet.
No one has one yet. I want a Discovery era Enterprise in the worst way. Although, Brian, rumor has it you tried to abscond with the $9,000 one from the Anovos booth. True or false, sir?
I had it under my shirt. I was halfway down the aisle, and someone grabbed me by the shoulder and said, "Sir, could you please put that back?" I said, "It's for review purposes. It's for review purposes." I said,
wow, you admitted to everything. I am stunned and amazed. I'm proud of you, buddy. Good job. On a more serious note, as we move along, Dan, last weekend, you and I both had the opportunity to meet the legendary Nichelle Nichols. And today, less than 1 week after STLV, TMZ has reported that she's been diagnosed with dementia. You and I both had photo opportunities with her. I got my photo opportunity signed. And I have to say, before you talk a little bit about the details, I am not surprised by this diagnosis.
Not at all.
While she was in the middle of signing my photo, she forgot how to spell the word blessings and had to ask somebody. So it's very sad. And like I said, not entirely surprising.
Well, I have to thank you first off before we get into the story, Bill, because we were talking about this and there was rumor that this might be her last STLV. And if we wanted to get a photo op, this year would be the year to do it. So I did decide to do it. The photo op was wonderful. She was such a joy just to say hello and thank her for everything she's done. So thank you for pointing me in that direction to get the picture. And I'm glad you were able to get her autograph. I actually did not get the autograph on the picture, and that's now something I'm regretting. But go right ahead.
No, I totally understand. Brian, obviously, as treknews.net man, I mean, this has to be a story that is not a happy one to report by any means. It looks like there's a conservatorship that's been established, and we can only hope that that's a positive thing for her future, perhaps.
Yeah, I think any of us that have been going to STLV over the last couple of years, we've noticed when they've had Nichelle up on stage that maybe she shouldn't be up there for a myriad of reasons, and one just because it seems like she has been getting somewhat forgetful of her time on Star Trek and elements of her life. So yeah, I don't think this diagnosis is anything that surprises most of us. It's still very sad. It's sad to see someone that we really do respect, and someone that is a big part and a big contributor to not just Star Trek, but also a contributor to fandom, and how genuine and beautiful of a person that Nichelle is. I wish her nothing but the best, and for the rest of her years. We've seen some of these actors in Star Trek pass away in recent years, and it really does touch all of us. They're people that contributed to our lives and contributed to our fandom and contributed to the people that we are today. So it's it is sad. It's something that we're trying to still kind of figure out how we will handle this on the site, this type of news. But yeah.
Yeah, it's I'm looking at the TMZ report that Bill mentioned, and her doctor, Dr. Mina Makajani, has been her doctor for about 2 or 3 years, and says that she has, quote, moderate progressive dementia. Her major impairments are short-term memory and moderate impairment of understanding abstract concepts, sense of time, place, and immediate recall. But it is said that on the bright side, the doctor says there's no apparent impairment of things like long-term memory, orientation of her body, comprehension, verbal communication, etc. So I guess if you want to put a bright side on this unfortunate story, that would be the bright side. But it's still such a sad thing to see happen to someone that we've grown to love so much over the years.
Of course.
Well, and let me introduce a new wrinkle now. So TrekCast earlier today, the podcast that is now in a next generation sort of format, had on a guest who has created a GoFundMe to benefit Nichelle Nichols, and it is titled Dignity for Nichelle Nichols. This person has become a friend of Nichelle's over the years and has spent lots of time with her. And she's attempting to raise $75,000 to assist Miss Nichols. This GoFundMe has been going on for 9 days so far. She alleges that Nichelle's health is good per se. She may ask you the same question quite a few times, or she may ask you where she is going, but that's normally because she simply doesn't remember. But largely because this has been started because her estate is in jeopardy. And everything that she's worked for decades, apparently items go missing regularly. And her finances are being called into question because those have been going missing. So obviously it's not an easy situation to be in. This GoFundMe is also urging a letter writing campaign to the judge in the case, because the hearing does not take place for another 6 days or so as we record this on August 16th. And it occurs to me that that's not necessarily how judges operate. Fan mail or it doesn't really weigh necessarily in their decisions. So if people want to investigate this GoFundMe, it's out there. It's up to you. I have a feeling that Nichelle needs a conservatorship at this point in her life. I've had a parent with dementia, and I understand what that means. And there's no good answers to this. I can only hope that the people who are charged with her care do the right thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I think all we all want is for Nichelle to be taken care of the way that she deserves to be, and whoever is taking care of her to have her best interests in mind.
I think that is so perfectly stated. Now, just before we came on mic tonight, Brian, you indicated that you may actually, because you know a little of the site called treknews.net, have another story that really just hit as we record this.
Yeah, about 2 minutes before we jumped on to do the podcast, news broke that both Chris Pine and Chris Hemsworth, their futures in Star Trek IV are in doubt as talks with Paramount have fallen through. Granted, these things can pick back up, but it sounds like the talks kind of fell through when both of these actors who have created these massive names for themselves, they're both part of these big comic book franchises. With those large comic book movies come big salaries. And what they had originally agreed upon for the Star Trek films may be a little out of whack for what they're demanding in Hollywood these days. So it sounds like talks have fallen through, at least for the time being. Again, this is something that could pick back up. The studio could go back and say, hey, we really see a lot of value in a fourth film. We see the ability to bring these two actors back in. And I know the reviews are somewhat mixed among Star Trek fans for the first three films. Personally, I really enjoyed all of them for what they are.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I would love to see a fourth one. But on the flip side of things, if Star Trek on the big screen went in a different direction, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing either.
No, I agree with you. I think that it would be nice if they did a fourth movie with the Kelvin timeline cast, but if they decided to go another way and even recast some people or everybody, I think I'm okay with that, because I think that this cast has done a great job. I mean, I like the movies too. And Dan, I'm pretty sure you're going to echo the same sentiment.
Mm-hmm. I love them. I love the Abrams movies, the Kelvin timeline. I think for me, I would rather, I'd rather see if somebody was not going to be there, I'd rather it be Chris Hemsworth, because I think Chris Pine has solidified himself as this movie version of Captain Kirk. And I think it would be very difficult to replace him and still have the rest of the Kelvin cast from the previous three movies. That would really look weird to me, I think. So if one of them was not going to be included, as much as I'd love to see how they're going to bring George Kirk back into this, I would say I'd rather have Chris Pine than Chris Hemsworth, but I really want to see both of them, to be honest.
You know, it's interesting that one insider says that, that the last film actually lost money if they start looking at the numbers. And it makes me wonder, can any movie make money these days that's not named Infinity War?
Right.
Nice.
Well, I guess time will tell. This is why you're on the pulse of all the StarTrekz. And I guess that, what can I say? Dude, you rock.
All the news and all the Star Trek. This is right.
And that should be a banner on the website really right there, like right underneath the title.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll be a banner at the Fan Geeks party next year.
Oh, I like that. We're going to talk a little bit about that and some other STLV news or stuff. News. See, I got news on the brain because we got the news guy here.
It's like being in front of the principal.
Well, boys, as we progress forward, let's talk about some Star Trek Las Vegas. I got a variety of bullet points before me, and we can probably talk about some of the implications or some of the things that went down around them, and I'll probably pepper between the two of you at various points. But Dan, the one up first is probably the most personal of stories for you anyway, as far as Star Trek Las Vegas. And it's you're getting to meet Colm Meaney from Star Trek Deep Space Nine, when we thought at one point you were not going to get to meet Colm Meaney at all.
I didn't think it was going to happen at all. Yeah, anybody who's heard my story knows that I credit Colm with literally saving my life from captive pursuit. We won't go into the whole details of that again. But when I heard that Colm was going to be at the convention, I immediately signed up for a photo op. I immediately signed up for an autograph because I wanted to have the opportunity just to thank him very quickly. Well, we headed out to Las Vegas on Wednesday morning, which unfortunately was the same time that Colm was going to be doing his photo ops. So I was not happy with the scheduling creation, but things happen. So we get to Chicago and I'm excited and all of a sudden we have an hour delay in our flight. I'm like, okay, we can still make it. We had some friends at Vegas who were going to meet us at the airport and shoot us right over to the convention site so I could get in line. And then we leave and we taxi out to the runway. And then we turn around and head back to the gate for a maintenance problem. So I know that this is not going to happen. I'm crushed, but I do have to say, Bill, I handled it very well, didn't I? Because you know how I usually can be.
I have no idea what you're talking about in any way, shape, or form. No, it was a pretty amazing thing. I mean, we landed on the ground and we dropped you at the Rio, and I stayed with the bags and eventually caught up. And before I know it, you're backstage meeting Colm Meaney.
Yeah, it really was something. And before I get into the Colm Meaney part, I just have to thank my Star Trek family for what they did for me. People like Haley Stoddart, people like Lou Halbert from Fanset. There were so many people involved. I know that Heather Barker had something to do with this. There were so many people that I can't name them all, but Haley was really the spearhead for this. And she was able to talk to creation folks and get something set up so that when Colm was at his autograph table, I walked up there and I said, hey, so-and-so from creation sent me over. I'm the person who was delayed flight. And his handler said, Colm, here's the gentleman. He's like, oh, okay. We stood up and we went backstage to get a selfie with him, which was just amazing to me. So it gave me the opportunity to, instead of just having 3 seconds with him for a photo op, I shook his hand and I said, Colm, I put my arm around his shoulder and I said, I just want to let you know that I am alive right now because of you, because of an episode where your character talk to somebody about the importance of life. And it just happened to be on TV the night that I had a gun in my mouth ready to pull the trigger. And I can never thank you enough for what you did that night. And he was speechless. His mouth was literally hanging open. He said, I don't even know what to say. And I said, you don't have to say anything, man. Just thank you so much. And we took a great selfie. I thanked him again. We went out into the main hall again, and he signed my poster for me, the Deep Space Nine poster, Bill, that you got me a couple of years ago. And as I was leaving, he put his hands out again, shook my hand, and said, thank you for telling me that story. I'll never forget it. It was the defining moment for me with everything that happened to me so long ago that I was able to do that. It was the moment of the convention, and it happened within the first hour that I was there. It was awesome.
That's absolutely incredible.
It's mind blowing. I mean, to think that, and this is part of the reason why I love going to Star Trek Las Vegas. It's for the people who are there, our Star Trek family, as Dan called them out, and just such an amazing group of people who knew you were going to not make it on time, and they still worked to make this happen for you. So I'll always be grateful for that myself. So
yeah, I got to say, I said it a little bit. It's amazing to me. We go out to spend time with these people that we only get to see once a year, and they have a lot of things that they want to do at Vegas. Also, they want to do their panels and they want to go to the vendors room and do their stuff. But all of these people took their morning to do something for me because they knew how much it meant to me. And for that, I can never say thank you enough, because it was the moment of a lifetime.
Well, I don't know how to follow that up other than to say it's pretty awesome. And if you haven't seen the picture, I'm sure it's you can see it on Dan's Twitter. It's pretty cool.
It is cool.
I'm not going to lie.
Super cool.
Dan, another highlight, and for us personally, was the Fan Geeks Party 2018. And although we hosted, I'm pretty sure that somebody else on this podcast may have attended that party and can attest to how off the hook it might have been allegedly.
Dude,
is that correct?
That party was something else. Lori and I have been to a bunch of different parties at STLV, and I told her on Saturday night we had to get over to this Fan Geeks party over at Caesars at the other side. And I don't think either of us knew what to expect. That place was jam-packed. I mean, we couldn't even really fit inside the other side bar. We had to stand kind of outside a little bit. Like, we went in for a little bit, and it was so hot from this many people that were jam-packed in there. Guys, you, along with Fansets, did such an absolutely incredible job. Everyone there was raving about how much fun they were having. You guys had these light up drinks, these light up margaritas in honor of Dan. You guys gave away some incredible prizes from Fansets and autograph stuff. And it was just, dude, it was such a good time. And thank you guys from this side of things. Thank you guys for all the work that you put into putting that thing together. And thanks to Lou and everyone over at Fansets as well for just such an awesome event.
They really set us up for success. It's been so great to work with them on these parties. The conservative estimate is we had 150% greater turnout this year than last. And we ran out of the Fansets pins at one point.
I got one.
Yeah, the Fan Geeks party. Yeah. Yeah.
What's actually kind of cool about that is for the coming up to the show before the party actually took place, we were under the belief that we had only 150 of those pins to give out. So once 150 people showed up, we weren't going to have any other of those, and we were going to give away some Discovery pins. Well, we found out later on that night that we actually had 250 of those pins, and we still ran out of them. So I was just humbled by the turnout that we had. I had such a great time. I know that Bill had a fantastic time as we were emceeing the event, just having a blast and watching all the people enjoy themselves. And I got to say, for the folks at the other room, we were talking to them at the end of the night, and one of the bartenders was so sweet. She said, I have never hosted a party like this before. It was so great. It was so fun. Everybody was happy. There was not one upset customer the entire night. And we said, that's what Star Trek fans are like. And it was great. We had a great time.
Well, there's the possibility next year, because we drew such a big crowd this year, that we could be at a different / bigger venue. And I think we're going to need it, because we were elbow to elbow in there, and it was warm, but it was a great time for sure. As we move away from Trek Geek centric news and the things that actually happened at STLV, it appears that in Rainn Wilson's panel on the day that he was scheduled, he may have engaged the people who refused to subscribe to CBS All Access. And it was entertaining from my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Dan, I'll ask for your thoughts initially, and then Brian, will move over to you. But I have to say, Rainn wasn't wrong.
Oh, he wasn't wrong at all. He was dead on. I gotta get my Stappity Starbucks drink. Spend $6.99 on that when he won't spend $6.99 on CBS All Access to watch a freaking awesome Star Trek series. And I think it took balls for him to do it, and he was spot on. And I have more respect for him now because he did it in that way. Mm-hmm. And I got to say, I was amazed when he asked, or Scott, I forget who it was who asked, how many people in the audience had not seen Star Trek Discovery, and the amount of hands that went up was very surprising.
Brian, I wasn't in the room at that point. Were you there at that point? And did you see how many hands went up?
I wasn't there for the entire panel. I was only there for the beginning before Rainn had talked about this. But I'd heard about it after, like I think a lot of us did. And not to go off on this long diatribe about why Star Trek fans should subscribe to All Access, but what I would recommend is don't think of it as CBS All Access. Think of it as the Star Trek network. You get all of the series, plus Discovery, plus the Discovery After Show. You get all of that content for whether it's $6.99 with commercials or $9.99 without commercials. And you can stop your subscription after Discovery runs if you so choose to, or keep it running the way that I do and just pop on an episode of Star Trek whenever you want to.
Right.
There's Netflix. Sure. And the Star Trek episodes are on there as well, but Discovery isn't. And to me, the price is not a barrier to entry.
I think somebody that we were hanging out with, and right now it escapes me who it was because it just caught me as so funny at the time, was that most of the people who said that they had not seen Discovery were also sitting in convention seats that cost them $1,000. Right. And that's not an exaggeration. No. That level, you're paying a good chunk of change to sit that close to the stage at STLV. So I did have to laugh at the irony because it was a little delicious. I'm not going to lie.
It's one of the things that gets under my skin. You're paying for Star Trek no matter where you watch it. If you're going to watch something on Netflix, you're paying your Netflix subscription. Right. If you're going to watch it on CDs, you bought the CDs. Everything costs something. And, I totally can appreciate and understand for those people who legitimately cannot afford to have a streaming service like that. But they're not the people that were sitting in that audience, as Bill pointed out, at STLV. And I love your analogy, Brian. It's the Star Trek network. And by what was said earlier this week in some news, some of the folks at CBS want CBS All Access to be having Star Trek on all the time. So it's only going to get bigger. So I thought Rainn was hilarious with what he did.
You're going to add something?
No. I was just going to say, Rainn comes off as someone who speaks his mind and isn't afraid to ruffle some feathers every once in a while. Mm-hmm. And I wish I was there to see the reaction. But you know what? All in all, at STLV, I think going in the weeks leading up to it, we weren't exactly sure how folks are going to react to some of those Discovery actors. And I want to commend everyone that was in the audience. Everyone seemed very, very appreciative and very, very positive towards Discovery, whether they are big fans of the show or somewhat critical. So it was great to see.
I agree with that. And continuing on with that point, I think one of the other interesting panels was the one Wilson Cruz was on. Because for those people who are watching Discovery, he said that Dr. Culber is coming back in season 2, which we all kind of suspected, those of us who watch Discovery.
Yeah.
But this was really the first real outward confirmation we've had from anybody in the Discovery camp that he was coming back. So I'm going to ask you both and maybe put you on the spot. Is he coming back for reals, or are we talking more mycelial stuff, or maybe flashbacks? Brian, how about you first?
I'm leaning towards mycelial network. There's so many different ways that Culber could be brought back, but I'm so glad that that character will get some more screen time. I think in that first season of Discovery, we all kind of fell in love with both him and the relationship that we started to see blossoming on screen. So I think to see that continue is an amazing thing. We spoke to Wilson Cruz a little bit later on in the convention, one-on-one, where we have the video up on treknews.net, and he had mentioned to us that we have only seen the first chapter of that love story, and there's so much more to come. And I think that I, for one, am super excited to see that continue. However, it continues.
I think for me, and I think you guys will probably agree, the oh holy bleep moment in season 1 was when he got his neck snapped. Right. Nobody saw that coming, I think, in any way, shape, or form. I am leaning towards the mycelial network also, but I really would love it if the mycelial network was somehow able to reincarnate him some way, whether it's through some kind of time. I mean, we know that they jumped 9 months into the future when they took the mycelial network to get back to the Prime universe. Who knows if they'll be able to do something so that they can bring him back, so it will be a real Wilson Cruz in a real Prime universe to continue that relationship with Stamets. That's what I'm hoping.
Sure.
I'm not, of course, I'd love to be in the writer's room to find out what they're doing, but of course none of us are. But I think it's great that he's going to be back. Your interview, Brian, with him was great. I love the back and forth that was going back between Wilson and the gentleman that did the interview. It was great to see him. They seem so willing to talk to us fans about what's going on in the show, and I loved watching it. It was great. All of the interviews were super, but Wilson's was really special.
Yeah, that's one thing that we've noticed about those Discovery actors, where they truly appreciate Star Trek. And I think as Star Trek fans, we all appreciate them for loving this thing that we have a love for. And Wilson Cruz is definitely one of those. He's kind of embedded himself in the Star Trek culture, and seems to realize the gravity of what he's become a part of and become a big part of.
Let me add one thing to that, Brian, because you said something that's very, very important. And I was going to bring it up later, but I think I want to bring it up now. Is I had the opportunity to get photo ops with Doug Jones, Mary Wiseman, and then Bill surprised me by having a picture with Stamets himself, and I was just ecstatic. And I sent out a tweet when we left, and I'm going to quote it here. It says, "So honored to stand with the likes of actor Doug Jones, Mae Wise, and Albino Kid from Star Trek CBS for photo ops. I have never felt so loved and welcomed as a fan, and from the bottom of my heart, I thank you." Their love of us when we are there to see them and get their autographs and pictures is unlike anything I've seen at a convention. And I'm not putting down the other series in any way, shape, or form, but these guys are so excited to be part of this thing. And it just bleeds off of them of how much fun they're having. And I think that's very important. And it just makes me love the show and the people involved in it even more.
Agreed. They all come off like such genuine people, and they have a genuine interest and genuine love for Star Trek. And I can't imagine a different cast being part of the show. I love every single member of the cast. I think they all do such a wonderful job. And not to, life isn't all rainbows and sunshine here. There's elements of the show that I'm critical of, but for the most part, I think that cast does such a wonderful job. And them as people, I think, add so much to it. When they're up on stage, they're not thinking about, oh, okay, I've got to run to the airport. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. I've got to get out of here. Let me answer this question. They seem genuinely interested in what the fans are asking, what the fans are interested in. And also when they're meeting these fans, I took a minute to kind of watch some of them doing their autograph signings or doing some of their photo ops. And they're looking everyone in the eye and thanking them for coming out to Star Trek Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. And I thought that says so much to me.
I agree with you 100%. The entire time you're saying those sentences, I'm thinking, yeah, we don't see that from Shatner, and we never really have. Yep. This is the first time in our lifetimes that we've had a cast of a Star Trek series, an entire cast that loves Star Trek. Mm-hmm. And that's not to be critical of any other actor that's been in Star Trek, but by and large, they were making a television show, whereas the Discovery cast seems to understand that they are part of a cultural phenomenon. And I think that there's a big difference there.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dan.
One of the things that I saw happen this week, you just touched on it a little bit, Brian, is our friend Heather Barker got a selfie photo op with Doug Jones at the autograph table. I think it was $20 to get a selfie.
She got several.
He took like 1 pictures with him. And different poses and hugs and everything. And that's something that was amazing. When I was taking the pictures, as I alluded to a few minutes ago, never were you allowed to shake the hands or it was always very, you get in line, you take the picture, you walk away. Every one of these actors was shaking hands. Doug Jones was kissing people on the forehead and giving hugs and great poses. And that's something that I haven't experienced at a convention before. And I thought it was really wonderful of them to be like that. And I have a feeling that they're like that at every convention because they're so happy about what they're doing.
I have to agree with you. I mean, it was so refreshing. I'll talk a little bit about my interaction with Sonequa Martin Green in a little bit, but I suppose that as we move on to the next bullet point, it wouldn't be a Star Trek convention if William Shatner wasn't having a feud with somebody. And previously it was George Takei. And although I think that feud was mostly manufactured by George because Shatner is kind of aloof and just really doesn't care, it seems that Jason Isaacs now really is kind of his target. And that's only because Isaacs really likes to goad him a little bit, I think. I was reading some of those tweets back and forth, and I really get the sense that Isaacs just likes pushing his buttons. Am I wrong?
So let me read a quote here from Jason Isaacs. And it's, I grew up worshiping William Shatner, ... Not William Shatner. I grew up worshiping Captain Kirk. There's a difference, is what Jason Isaacs had said when he was up on stage at STLV. And I don't think that that's necessarily him saying anything negative about William Shatner. I think Shatner may have taken it negatively. But I think that that's just him creating this healthy separation between an actor and the role that the character that he's portraying on screen. I think can get unhealthy a little bit when we put these actors on these pedestals and expect so much from them, from these characters that they had portrayed in Star Trek.
I agree with you. I've said for years that Captain Kirk was my boyhood hero, not William Shatner. Because Captain Kirk was, he was the hero. He was the guy that always won the day. He was the white hat. Right. And I think, to me, that's what Jason Isaacs' comments said, honestly. I know that whomever runs William Shatner's Twitter, because most of the time it's not William Shatner, is essentially a troll. And they keep this sort of diatribe going. In fact, at one point, they had Isaacs blocked, but then he unblocked him after all of these tweets back and forth. So I get the sense that it's for Shatner to try to stay relevant in the world of Star Trek, because Lord knows when he's at a convention, he talks about anything but.
It's funny that you said that, Bill, because I was going to say, I can't imagine that he writes his own tweets most of the time. So it's probably somebody who just wants to be provocative and cause a little bit of a firestorm. And I mean, somebody actually called him out and said, you might want to reread that tweet. He compliments you and you have the nerve to say those things about him. And Shatner's response was, no, read it again. I'll be here once you figure it out. I mean, I didn't take it in any insulting way when I read it. you said it yourself just a minute ago. It was Captain Kirk, not William Shatner. When we talk about Star Trek Continues, that Vic Mignogna has cemented himself as a Captain Kirk. Mm-hmm. It's not a William Shatner being a Captain Kirk. It's Captain Kirk. It's the character that means the most to us as fans. So, yeah, this was just, I didn't really pay much attention to this, to be honest, because after Jason Isaacs, it's going to be somebody else. So why bother? So
that's exactly how I feel. I mean, it's just, I get the feeling Shatner's going to go through a list. If it's not George, it's going to be Jason. If it's not Jason, it's going to be whomever else. I mean, maybe there'll be a faux feud with Patrick coming up, and we'll talk more about Sir Patrick in just a couple of bullet items. I think there may be a few things to say about him.
We're never going to get Shatner on now.
You guys blew it.
Well, we were in no danger of that before.
No, not at all.
They were to put that out there. This STLV was the first for Star Trek Discovery lead Sonequa Martin Green, and I have to say that she was absolutely electric. I stood in line to get her autograph for what seemed like 2 hours. Oh, that's because it was 2 hours.
2 hours, yeah.
And she was so gracious and so sweet to everybody that came up to her, to your point from earlier, Brian. She not only gets Star Trek, I'm going to fanboy a little bit here and say she seems to live Star Trek. And this franchise is in capable hands with her at the top of that call sheet. Mm-hmm. I'm going to throw it out there. I thought that her panel was delightful, the one with Doug Jones and Anson Mount.
Yep.
And I feel like that she came away knowing what this Star Trek family was like. Dan, did you get the same impression?
I got the exact same impression. And the thing that is amazing to me is I've said it, I don't know if I've said it to you out loud, Bill, but I've thought it, is we've seen her at so many things, whether it's San Diego Comic-Con or interviews and Entertainment Tonight or any of these other things. She is so personable and always excited to talk about Discovery. And there's never any fall off of the hill on her excitement. And she was just as gung-ho about it in STLV. And I got to think at this point that it's real. People would start seeing it, if it's the same lines over and over again, that it's going to be, okay, I have to say this, so I'm going to smile when I say it. It's not. She always says different things and it always comes out great. And she was fantastic on that panel, as was Doug and Anson. It was great.
Brian, what do you think? You got your chance to see her for the first time in person. I think she's pretty electric.
Yeah, for sure. I had actually taken off super early, get my flight back to Boston on Sunday morning, so I didn't get to see her at STLV, but I did see her last year at New York Comic-Con. And like you guys were saying, just such an electric personality, somebody that you kind of want to be around. You're intrigued by what they're saying. And it makes you realize how Star Trek is in such capable hands with her as the star of that show. She seems like she truly appreciates being part, again, of Star Trek. She appreciates being put in this position of, you're no longer just a co-star or someone else that she was in her role in The Walking Dead. She is now the star of the show, and she's taken that ball and really run with it. She's doing such an amazing job leading that show and just being the face of that series.
Yep, I agree.
I'm just making a note here. I'm sorry, Brian left early.
I did.
Okay.
I did.
There it is right there. Brian left early.
He actually wrote it down, folks.
I did. I'll take photographic evidence and post it to the Twitter feed later. One of the other big reveals during her panel with Doug Jones and Anson Mount was the fact that Star Trek Discovery is coming to Blu-ray and DVD in November, with pre-orders having started this past week. I am psyched. I've been waiting for this to come out on Blu-ray because I want to own it. My precious. And I think the thing that it leaves me asking myself is, do you think that some of those naysayers who don't want to subscribe to CBS All Access will discover Discovery this way? Brian, we'll go to you first.
I would hope so. I think some folks, they're always going to have an excuse not to support something or not to financially support something. But this eliminates one of those reasons. You hear from a lot of folks, I'm not subscribing to another network. I'm not subscribing to another subscription service. But this show now being available on both Blu-ray and DVD And maybe the folks, maybe their excuse at this point is, well, it's not available on VHS. I need it on VHS. Go with my old Voyager
disc.
It eliminates that excuse, and I think the show is worth your time. Is it perfect? I think we can all agree. No, it's not. It's not perfect. But if you think about the first season of any Star Trek series, none of them were perfect. We grew to love those characters, but it's not based solely on that first season. We're building with the second season. We're going to build with, if there's a third, a fourth, maybe 7 seasons, we're building and forming this relationship with these characters. And dialing back to the Blu-ray and DVD news, the amount of extras, the 2 hours of extras.
Oh yeah.
That's worth the price of admission alone right there.
Mm-hmm. It's funny. We're talking about it. It's $50 for the Blu-ray, $41.99 for the DVD at Amazon.com, and $6.99 a month, so you could binge watch the whole first season on CBS All Access. But yet there are still these people that math is hard, and they're still going to complain about it. You just brought it up. There are tons of extra stuff in these. Discovering Discovery, the concepts and casting of Star Trek Discovery is one of the things. Creature Comforts, which is a behind-the-scenes look at the makeup and prosthetics, which we all know are fantastic. Designing Discovery. Prop Me Up by prop master Mario Moriera to talk about all of the Discovery props. I mean, I think there's like 15 or 16 different featurettes that are listed as what's available in these behind the scenes. I, for one, love that stuff. Whenever I get a DVD, I love watching the behind the scenes, the bloopers, the outtakes, and all that kind of stuff. So this is something, I'll tell you what, I think, Bill, you're going to do the same thing. I have CBS All Access. I pay for it by yearly. This is going to be on my shelf come November 13th when it gets released. So I'm excited about it.
I'm officially not allowed to buy anything for myself after my birthday in October so that my family can still get me Christmas presents. So I have a feeling that I'm going to have to wait until December 25th to crack this bad boy open. I'm just saying.
I'll let you know how it is.
I think that one of the divides I used to read in the whole CBS All Access debate was the difference between renting content in perpetuity and owning it outright. And I have to hope that some people will take the plunge and buy this series because, like you said, Brian, there's not a Star Trek series that's been perfect ever. Ever.
Yep.
You know, whether you look at them as a whole or even just on a season by season basis, you know, some of them, you know, have had some not so great outings. And TNG season 1, I'm looking at you.
And may I say, Bill,
no,
I'm speaking for myself, of course, but I think we talked about all the season 1s. This by far is the best season 1 of any of the Star Trek series, in my opinion, by a landslide. And that's including Deep Space Nine.
I'm glad you interrupted me to steal the actual second half of my thought. Drink your margarita and shut your face.
Oops.
No, but you said it. You said exactly what I was thinking. It's like you're in my head, man. It is the burst. This is the burst first series, the best first season of any Star Trek series that we've ever seen since TOS. Because TOS season 1 is pretty rock solid. So I'm very psyched about it. I'm really going to drop as many hints as I can to my wife that I would really love to see this Christmas morning. I'm just saying, or perhaps I'll get special dispensation to buy it on my own. Time will tell. Well, gentlemen, that was all a warm up to what really is the huge story coming out of Star Trek Las Vegas. And unless people have been living in a cave for the last week, I am talking, of course, about the return of Sir Patrick Stewart to Star Trek as Jean-Luc Picard in a brand new CBS All Access series, premiere date to be announced. I guess first I want to know your reaction when you first heard. And Dan, I know yours, so I'm going to go to Brian first on that. Brian, were you there for the surprise, and were you in fact surprised?
First off, gentlemen, I feel like we really buried the lead here. Patrick
That's what we do.
is coming back as Jean-Luc Picard. This is world changing. This really is. And I don't mean to I don't want to make this sound crazier than it is, but after Shatner's panel, Adam Malin from Creation Entertainment came out on stage and he said, we've got a special surprise for you guys. Hang tight. First up, Alex Kurtzman comes out on stage as we're going to make the announcement of our brand new Star Trek series that's going to join Discovery on CBS All Access. And I think we had all heard the rumors of Patrick Stewart possibly returning to Star Trek. Would it be in his own series? Would it be a guest starring role on Discovery? Would he be part of that fourth film somehow, or some other film? When Alex Kurtzman welcomed Patrick Stewart on stage, and for the listeners that weren't in attendance at STLV, Patrick Stewart was not at this convention. He was not supposed to be there. He was not advertised. That place shook. That
exploded.
It really did. Him coming out and telling that story and describing how we are currently in a world that needs Jean-Luc Picard. And that statement of Jean-Luc Picard is back. And that reaction was like no other. I've been going to STLV for 10 years now. And I've never heard a reaction like that. I can't think of, again, I don't want to make this sound bigger than it is, but I can't think of a bigger story coming out of STLV, anything that could have been announced. William Shatner's name is synonymous with Star Trek. And hold on, wait with me here for a minute.
Yeah.
If they had come out and William Shatner said after his panel, hold on, I've got one more thing. The old Steve Jobs line. I've got one more thing. I'm returning as Captain Kirk. I think that would be a major, major, major story. But I don't know if it would be as big as Jean-Luc Picard returning to the role. Patrick Stewart returning to the role of Jean-Luc Picard. We all love Captain Kirk. I think there are varying degrees of love for William Shatner. For the most part, as Star Trek fans, we love Patrick Stewart. He comes off like such a wonderful, beautiful human being. Someone that we all kind of look at and say, I kind of want to be a little bit more like him. And it was just, it was definitely a moment. It was one of those, let's capitalize this. Let's put it in italics. It was a moment to be in that room. I was down below the stage, right in front of him as he's making this announcement. And again, I'm making this sound really big because it is. I had almost a tear in my eye. I'm looking around at the other photographers, and we all heard the rumors that this could be a possibility. We heard that there was going to be a big announcement. We're kind of putting two and two together. But when we heard those words of Jean-Luc Picard is back, that was a moment. And I would love to hear. I would love to hear your reactions as well.
It really was. And, it's funny you say you don't want to make it bigger than it is, but this is pretty huge, even for Star Trek, because if you think about it, this is happening because of the fandom. Yes. How many, for almost 20 years, people have been saying, we want to see something post-Nemesis. We want to see something post-Nemesis. And even Patrick said, he knows that Next Gen is something that brought people through difficult periods in their lives, and how Picard was inspirational. Sure. And we need that kind of about now. And I don't think he's wrong. I know that I'm not the only person that sat there with tears in my eyes, and I'm going to come right out and say it. Picard, I don't view Picard as my captain. It's either Sisko or Kirk for me, but Patrick Stewart was just magnetic on that stage, and he touched the heart of everybody in there. I should say the half of the people that didn't leave the room because Alex Kurtzman was taking the stage, because that's exactly what happened when Shatner left.
I too was in tears, as Bill can attest to, because we were sitting next to each other, and I think I almost pulled his arm out of his socket when I saw Patrick come through the doors. We were kind of in the back, but as soon as the doors open, I saw his head, and it's a very, very bald head, and I just started going nuts. One of the things I like so much about this, in addition to the fact that he was just so electric on stage, and he was moved by the reaction that the crowd gave him when he said Jean-Luc Picard is back, is, as Bill said, This is something that fans have wanted for a long time. Ever since before Enterprise came out, they've wanted something that took place after Nemesis. And not to say that this is going to happen or is not going to happen, but it opens up the possibility of any TNG character, any DS9 character, or any Voyager character from somehow being a guest on this series, which I think all of us would love to see one more time where we can see any of these beloved characters, even if it is 20 years in the future. And I, for one, hope that they do that. I hope they don't overdo it. But it just opens up such an unbelievable future for the franchise. And I had concerns at first about, well, Sir Patrick is not a young chicken anymore, and how would he be as Picard so far along in age? But if anything, it showed us when he was on stage exactly what he can do with that character, and I can't wait to see what happens.
I think the thing that is the most interesting about this premise for me is that he is going to be Jean-Luc Picard. It is 20 years after Nemesis, so it's prime timeline. They said it without saying it, which I think is beautiful. And he may not be a captain, and he may not be in Starfleet. And I think that that's the most interesting premise.
Yeah.
What does a man do who has seen and done so many things, explored strange new worlds, negotiated treaties, battled the most fearsome enemy the Federation has ever faced? What does he do when he steps away from all that? And then how is he brought back somehow? I think this is a series with incredible potential. And I'll say right now, I am so psyched that Kirsten Beyer led the charge on this.
Yeah.
This is a fantastic premise, and she is a wonderful writer of novels and also on Star Trek Discovery. And I love this entire idea. I'm bought in already, and I haven't even seen a trailer.
Right.
Yeah, in a world that we live in now with all of these reboots and this nostalgia-driven culture that we live in now, this was one that didn't come off as pandering to me, anyways. It didn't come off as, oh, here we are, we're gonna trot Patrick Stewart back out as Jean-Luc Picard. This is something as fans that we really do want. Like, we want to spend more time with him, whether he's a captain or not. We just want to spend more time with him. And how fantastic is it going to be to see him 20 years after Nemesis? Just incredible. I can't wait to see this show. I want to see it right now.
Yeah.
Some of the best shots were the ones taken either backstage or the one in of Patrick on stage with Frakes and LeVar Burton off in the wing, just watching him announce it. And they're excited that he's back.
Yeah.
This isn't, season 8 of TNG. This is season 1 of Jean-Luc Picard. And they are excited that their friend and their longtime coworker is back as this legendary character in the Star Trek universe, and that makes me even happier. Plus, it means Frakes will probably be back to direct. LeVar could be back to direct.
Right.
Robbie Duncan McNeil could be back to direct. Roxanne Dawson, anybody that's directed before. We could see some more Crusher Picard stuff, which I think would be fantastic 20 years later. I think the possibilities for this are endless. And the thing I keep telling people is that, Sir Patrick wouldn't be back if this wasn't a top shelf concept,
right,
with a top shelf team working on it. People can crap on Alex Kurtzman all they want to, but it's his tenure that has brought back the most legendary starship captain in most people's lives. And I think this is a big win for fandom. This is a big win for Star Trek. And honestly, for CBS, if I have to touch all the bases here.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention is he made it very clear that his days as Captain Picard were done, and he was fine with it. And then he got that email about 6 months ago, and everything started with the negotiations. So he is going to have probably a lot of say in what goes on. And you said it, Bill, it's not going to be just some pandering. It's going to be a real show, which is going to have top of the top men. So to quote Raiders of the Lost Ark, involved in it, and women, of course. And like you said, Kirsten Beyer, oh my God, that woman is, oh my God, I just want to hug her face for what she's doing with this franchise, because it's phenomenal. And it cannot get here soon enough. I can't wait. I'm already waiting for the trailer. You know how I love trailers. I want to see the trailer right now. Let's get the trailer going. CBS, let's go.
Without a doubt.
I'm hoping for the inevitable Neelix cameo, quite frankly. No, Dan? No? Nothing?
No.
What about Chakotay? Akujimoya.
Hello, Mr. Vulcan.
I think that everybody left that room and that appearance by Sir Patrick feeling reinvigorated and electric and alive and excited. You know, not that Discovery's not exciting, because it is. I mean, I am so psyched for season 2 of Discovery, but like I said earlier, this was fandom in action. I mean, Sir Patrick essentially said those words,
right?
That it's because of the fans, and he knows what Star Trek means to them. And I still get goosebumps talking about it right now. I mean, he, I can't wait to see him put that character back on, because it's a fantastic character played by an incredible actor. Oh my God.
He is. He's absolutely phenomenal. And if the character that he played in that most recent Logan film, Professor X, the aged Professor X, if that's an inkling of what we are in store for, that's going to be beautiful. And it's not going to be a similar character by any means, but you know, it's a similar character in the way that he's progressed, he's aged, he's been through a lot, and we're going to be able to revisit him and spend some more time with him. And again, that's the thing that I'm most excited for.
I think the other potential this brings is, you know, we may get the answers to some questions we never thought to ask. Like, what happened to the rest of the crew aboard the Enterprise during those 20 years? Was there something horrible that happened? Were there characters that we've loved as part of TNG that didn't survive? You know, I think that beyond Data, obviously, because I'm sorry, Dan's sister, Data's still dead. You know, I mean, who knows? I mean, is it possible that some of these other characters may have met an untimely fate and he feels guilt over that? I think that would be very compelling. As I just sort of go through things, will we see an older Q?
Oh,
that's a very interesting thing, because the trial is never over.
Will we see a younger Q? That makes no sense.
No, that really makes zero sense. Brian, I'm sorry you had to endure that. Every now and then he goes out in left field and just sort of stays there. But now you've seen it firsthand, and I apologize. I really do.
So sorry.
Final thoughts on Patrick Stewart's return to Star Trek, Brian?
Again, I just can't wait. We don't know when this show is going to air. From what I've heard, it could be anywhere, possibly airing 2 years from now. And those 2 years are going to take so long to get there, because I can't wait to see him back on the screen. It's major news. It's international news. I've had a couple outlets in the UK reach out for a couple quotes just on thoughts on this. It's not something that is just here and it's a big story within the Star Trek community. It's a big story worldwide. And that just goes to show how big of a name Patrick Stewart is, but how much he means to not just Star Trek fans, but people that have a little bit more of like a surface level interaction and knowledge of Star Trek. They still know who Captain Picard is.
Right.
So it's great for Star Trek. It's great for the world, and I'm just so thrilled to have him back as Jean-Luc Picard.
Dan, what about you?
Well, I can't say anything that Brian hasn't already said. We were initially, I think, Bill, when the rumors started floating around, we were a little skeptical. It was like, okay, what's this going to be like? But seeing him up on stage talking about it quashed all those concerns that I had. I will say one thing that I may be a little nervous about is, remember when Tilly dropped an F-bomb not too long ago? Well, let's look at Logan with Patrick Stewart playing Professor X, and he drops like 30 F-bombs. What's it going to be like when Picard drops one? Because CBS All Access, it can happen. You never know. And I'm going to say right now on mid-August on Trek Geeks, it's going to happen. He's going to drop an F-bomb.
Well, I mean, as it is, Picard already said "merde" in 2 episodes of TNG back in the early days. So his character got away with it because Americans don't know French. I mean, let's be honest.
But in all seriousness, I am ecstatic about this announcement. I think it was one of the most amazing moments I have witnessed in my fandom, to be in that room when it happened. And like Brian said, that place went absolutely berserk. And I'm just so glad that we were all a part of it. It was phenomenal.
Let me pose a different question to you boys. And as I formulate this question, Brian, is that a suit of armor behind you?
It sure is. It sure is. We used to have it upstairs in our dining room.
Of course you did.
We were worried our 2-year-old son would walk into it or cut himself, so we've brought it down into the basement here.
Wow.
Makes perfect sense. I'll throw this question out to both of you. I mean, as we've all indicated, this is news that has kind of rocked not just Star Trek, but the entertainment community in general. Does this take some of the steam off a fourth Kelvin timeline movie? Has CBS sort of soured the milk in the cornflakes of Paramount? And Brian, we'll go to you first.
Being that CBS and Paramount are still two separate entities, I don't know if it has a ton of correlation. I feel like Paramount is still going to want to make their own iteration or version of Star Trek. And whether that's Kelvin timeline or something else, we shall see. I don't think they're, long story short, I don't think that they're out of the business of making Star Trek films. They won't be Patrick Stewart led Star Trek films, most likely, with this new series coming up. But I don't think that they're out of making Star Trek films. And again, what we talked about earlier with the two Chris's not being part of that upcoming film, or if there's going to be an upcoming film, we shall find out.
Dan, what about you, man?
I think it's definitely taken the spotlight away from Paramount and the whole Star Trek 4 movie, because just a couple of months ago, that was the big story, is all the different discussions with the first female director and whether Quentin Tarantino was going to be involved in another movie. That is all now way down the list based on what happened at STLV and Sir Patrick Stewart. I don't think it sours the relationship between the two, because as Brian said, they are still the two separate entities. But right now, in my personal opinion, and I don't mean this to be a mean thing to say, but Paramount's second fiddle at the moment. I think they've been second fiddle for a little while because Discovery has been so successful and they've put out quite a product. And it's kind of hard to stay up front when you only have one thing coming out every 4 years, where you have a TV series that's on for 15 weeks and then you're going to have a small hiatus and you're going to have another season. And now you're going to have another show that's going to have another season. So CBS has all their eggs in the right basket right now. And we'll just see because I think CBS and Paramount are still trying to merge or something, aren't they? So we'll see what this has to do with what the future holds for them, I guess.
They are, although that's hit some rocks, if you will, with the discussions between the Redstone side and the CBS side. Although the most recent news on Les Moonves is an interesting wrinkle in that, as far as the Me Too movement and whether or not he will retain his position as the head of the largest media organization on the planet. I guess time will tell. Guys, I don't know about you, but this STLV was a blast. I can't wait to do next year, 2019. I have not made my hotel reservation yet because I'm waiting for a deal on the Strip. But you can sure as all get out believe that I'm going to be there day one and maybe even the night before this year or next year.
I booked yesterday.
Nice.
Hurry up, Bill. Let's go. Let's book it up.
You have a computer and a web browser, Dan. I'm just throwing that out there. Brian, thank you so much for joining us this very first time on Trek Geeks. I hope that there will be a future occurrences of this happening and that you're not completely scared away by Dan and his ugly face. Obviously, we plug treknews.net every chance we get. But, obviously, aside from the obvious website URL, how else can people interact with you and the good folks there?
On social, you guys can reach us on Twitter at TrekNewsNet, on Facebook at Trek News, and on Instagram at Trek News. If you want to reach out to me personally, if you have any thoughts or want to read anything that I'm tweeting about related to UX or visual design or photography or pictures of my kid. You can reach me at Brian Wilkins. And guys, thank you honestly so much. I'm so glad that we were able to match up our schedules, and I was able to get on episode 147 of Trek Geeks.
Well, let's do it again before episode 300. That's all I have to say. Considering we're almost halfway to that point, No, but again, thank you so much, Brian. It's always good to have friends on the show, and man, you're always fantastic to us. We love everyone over at treknews.net, and
likewise.
Like for all the news on all the StarTrekz, that's where we go. Man. That's where we go. Dan, the other people we have to thank in our lives, the amazing band 5 Year Mission. We missed them in Las Vegas this year, and we hope everybody writes to Creation and lets them know that they want 5 Year Mission back as the house band for STLV 19, occurring in 51 weeks. They are every ounce of music you hear on Trek Geeks, and they are just amazing. And this isn't parody stuff, guys. I mean, this is original compositions based on every episode of the original series. It causes you to look at these episodes a little differently, and they're just, every song is lights out. So that's treknews.net. It's 5yearmission.net. Go get yourself,
one more plug.
I know. Go get yourself all their tunes. Seriously, you're going to become a huge fan. Isn't that right, Dan?
Absolutely right. We missed them out there this year at STLV. We did have them playing over the speakers at the Fan Geeks party, and we look forward to catching up with them real soon. But I got to say, you got to wonder when too much is too much. One FARC is okay, right?
Yeah.
Two might be okay. 3, maybe a little bit more than you can handle. But when you're talking 4, 5, or 10, I don't know about you guys, but I don't know if I can handle that. But that is exactly what happened in this recent episode that I watched, where things in the holodeck just went all wrong during a rock concert simulation gone bad. I know, Bill, I can tell how scared you are. It's a FARC full of datas, and I'm not exactly sure how much a FARC full is, but it's probably like a lot. So check it out.
See, here I thought you were going FARC of Gideon.
I've already done that one. I
know. I see. I don't keep a list of them like you do. You got an entire database.
I do.
Of FARCisms that you've used in 147 episodes. Yeah, a FARC full of datas. Yeah. So anyway, that's 5yearmission.net. Download all their albums. Make FARC a happy guy, because Lord knows these FARCisms must drive him to want to pull his hair out. Dan, next week, it's time to talk about yours and my all-time favorite villain in Star Trek history. And this is a conversation I'm dying to have.
Oh, I can't wait to have this conversation, man. He is our all-time favorite villain. He is so Cobra-like in his look, ready to strike at a moment's notice, expertly played by the great Mark Alaimo. And next week, we will dedicate an entire episode to the one and only Gul Dukat. From Bajoran Overseer to Renegade to Leader of Cardassia to Pa-Wraith Worshipper. We're going to cover it all, man. So check it out next week on Trek Geeks, your independent Star Trek podcast.
You kill me with that every week. Dukat, probably one of the most layered villains in all of Star Trek. One of my favorites, and we'll talk about it next week. Of course, Dan, for more great Star Trek discussion, we want everyone to check out the Tricorder Transmissions online at the tricordertransmissions.com. Their Night of Diversity party was a huge success. Congrats to everybody there for raising some money for a couple of fantastic charities. And it was great to catch up with everybody over at Tricorder. Can't wait to do it again next year. I just wish it happened more often. And of course, Dan, as we've said already once before, for all the news on all the StarTrekz, please visit our dear friends at treknews.net. For now, this has been episode 147 of the Trek Geeks podcast. We do hope you all live long and prosper.
Jean-Luc Picard, it's coconut.
What the f*** does that mean?
It doesn't mean anything. It's just fun.
Jean-Luc Picard is coconut? Your face is coconut.
I'm going to drink to that.
You'll drink to anything. I know you.
Music for Trek Geeks is provided by 5 Year Mission. They are writing one song for each episode of the original series. Download their music at 5yearmission.net. Trek Geeks, a Star Trek podcast, is a production of Coconut Media Works. Executive producer, Bill Smith. For even more Star Trek discussion, check out Discovering Trek, a Star Trek Discovery companion, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and discoveringtrek.com.
Hey, boys, bing bong.
I dealt with you for a whole week. I really don't need any of your guff.
I wouldn't say you dealt with me as much as you endured me. Wait, that didn't sound good.
That didn't sound good at all. If you want to reel that in.
I wouldn't say you endured me as much as you tolerated. No, this gets worse.
It doesn't.
Worse.
Just be
the
quiet.
first rule of being in a hole is to stop digging.
Okay, I think this week Trek Geeks is brought to you exclusively by Dan Davidson. You just go home.
Thank God. Well, it's a good thing Brian's here, right, Brian?
I'm here, guys.
Wow. A guest for the outtake.
At some point, you were going to regret this decision magnificently.
I did 10 minutes before I got on the show.
Wow. Oh, he's going to fit in just great here.
Wow. Wow,
face.
it's for his first and last ever appearance on the Trek Geeks podcast. Brian Wilkins, everybody.
Your face. Yeah, I said it.
Yeah. We got two geeks and Brian. Yeah.
Sir. Part-time geek.
Part-time geek.
Hey, any geek is a good geek, whether it's part-time or not.
That's true.
Hey, so I have to ask you this because this probably won't come up in the course of the show, but we've never really talked about how your fandom started.
Mm-hmm.
When did you become a fan? What was it that brought you in? What kept you going?
So it's funny. I just had to. I did an email interview a couple weeks ago, and I kind of had to think about this. And growing up, to be honest with you guys, I wasn't that big of a Star Trek fan. I saw episodes of TNG here and there, and I'd watch a couple episodes. I was a sci-fi fan, but I was more of a Star Wars fan growing up. And I think, I'm sorry. I'm just being honest. You asked for the truth.
Wow. Wow, Dan, that was like DEFCON 1. Don't do that.
Sorry.
And I think as I got a little bit older, Star Trek was something that kind of grew. It really grew on me. It was a few of my friends were into it. They said, "Here, check out a couple of these episodes," and they had pulled out a couple of the TOS episodes, a couple of the TNG episodes, and I started to realize that this show is, or these films and these television shows are so much more than just a little bit of entertainment. You learn a little bit about yourself. You learn a little bit about the people around you, the people that are important to you, the things that are important to you. And not to get too serious, but it was one of those things that really stuck with me. Some of those episodes stuck with me. It made me more and more and more interested. And here we are, I don't know, almost 20 years later, and I'm running a Star Trek news website for going on, when we start? 2011, so 7 years.
Nice.
So did you just wake up one day and decide I'm going to start a Star Trek news website? Or
I had I'd contributed to a couple other of the Trek websites, and really enjoyed being a contributor. Photography was something that I'm really into. Design photography. That's what I do as my day job. And after contributing for a while, I thought, you know what? There's elements of this that I think that we could do. I'm apprehensive to say better. There's elements of this that I think we could take our own perspective on and contribute and have a different voice on some of these things and the way that we cover these things, whether it's the conventions or the news or the movies or reviews of the television shows or any of this stuff. So that was really the impetus for it, and just wanting to be part of that Star Trek, that subculture.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And I don't know if it was similar for you guys, where you just kind of wanted to be part of it, and it was something that I wanted to be part of. And I'm not a writer. I'm not a television writer. I'm not an actor, so it wasn't like I was going to eventually be on a Star Trek television series. So how could I be part of this? And this was kind of my angle to be part of it and kind of live within this world of Star Trek.
That's really interesting. We should tell Krekorian about you and have him dig in on your fandom and Trek profiles, which has quickly become one of my favorite podcasts. And when he hears this, his brain's going to melt down. Because it does every time I say it.
So
I've heard a ton of good. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say. So what I heard about all that great explanation is, there wasn't crap to talk about with Star Wars, so I just figured I'd go with something else. Jerk.
As much as I loved Star Wars growing up, I didn't have that same connection as I have with Star Trek now.
Yeah.
It didn't hit me so deeply as Star Trek did. And it's something that builds year after year after year. It's not like, oh, when I was 22, I was so much more of a Star Trek fan. At 38 years old now, I'm more of a Star Trek fan than I was in my mid-20s when I first started watching it. So
nice.
It's
I do have one breaking piece of news that I wanted to share with you since you're sharing this story.
Okay. I would love to hear it.
Hand fired first.
He did, no doubt. No doubt about it. We can all agree upon that.
No.
Yes, I bet you have. No. Wow, thanks for that insightful commentary, Dan.
My pleasure. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah. That's why you're here.
Yeah.
Well, I've made a serious error somewhere along the way.
Well, it is supposed to be the outtake. There has to be some kind of drivel in it. This is an awesome conversation we're having with Brian. I had to mix it up a little bit.
Well, it's so rare that I get to talk to somebody insightful and intelligent on this podcast, so I thought I'd avail myself of the opportunity.
I just fake it the whole way through. That's all.
So does Dan.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I do.
Yeah, Dan actually doesn't listen to this podcast. It's amazing.
Do you guys listen to the shows after?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Absolutely. Because I've talked to some other podcasters, and they won't listen to their shows other than the editing, the minor editing that they'll do after the show. So
I do for quality reasons, because I want to be sure that I didn't do something really bad. And you figure 3.5 years in, I should have this down by now, and I probably do. But it's that comfort level of saying, "All right, yep, that sounded good." I didn't make any obvious mistakes. I don't listen to it to be entertained by myself. I listen to it as educational purpose.
Right.
Dan listens to it to be entertained by himself.
Absolutely.
I listen. Yeah, I entertain myself while I'm listening to it. Actually, so it's pretty nice. Actually, to be honest, I think a lot of people are this way. I hate the sound of my voice on microphone, and I'm sure Bill does too. That's I just walked into that one couldn't even believe, but just a rake, bang,
garden rake.
But yeah, it's something that I've never really liked. But yeah, usually driving to work or driving back home from work, I'll listen to it when we're not commuting together. Yeah. So,
how many days a week do you guys commute together?
Too many.
Love the videos, by the way, but
somewhere usually between 3 and 5.
Nice. Yeah, nice. It's awesome.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, because schedules or appointments or whatever. When you were building the house, there were times where you had to be back earlier or later, or come in later, and it works out that way. Or sometimes if traffic really sucks on Route 3, it's, hey, leave without me.
Right.
Yeah.
But now that you live 7 minutes away, like around the corner, literally.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
There'll be less of that.
I know. God, what have I done? Thank you for the comment about the lip sync. So I got to tell you, I'm going to break it right here, guys. I've decided I know what I'm going to do for the next time that Bill is not around and I have to go solo. And it's not going to be music.
Doesn't that kind of defeat the purpose of a lip sync? I'm just throwing it out there.
Not at all.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, of course, I will say that the last time you weren't there, my wife actually did a killer job with I Just Had Sex by the Lonely Island.
She did an excellent job.
She immersed herself and really just killed it.
Yeah, she was going for it. She was definitely going for it.
Yeah. So maybe, Dan, someday you could aspire to that level.
I have ideas of what I'm going to do. I might be in uniform or in character. We'll find out.
What?
La 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 la.
Well, with that, are you gentlemen ready to begin?
You got it.
Let's do this thing.
Wow, that's usually my line. Way to go, Wilkins. Coconut.